Thank you very much. Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Jacobs, distinguished members of the committee, I'm honored to share my views before this committee today. Just want to state that CSIS does not take policy positions, so the views represented in this testimony are my own and not those of my employer. In this testimony, I would like to reinforce the recommendations that I made before this committee in March. In addition, I would like to reflect on how this tenuous moment in US-Nigeria relations provide an opportunity for both countries to work together to address the critical threats of jihadist violence and insecurity in Nigeria, and to develop a more strategic partnership. The United States and Nigeria have a complicated bilateral relationship with shared interest in counterterrorism and economic development. But this relationship is often marked by periods of friction. Nigeria wields significant continental and regional influence, but grapples with violent extremism and internal security. Nigeria's leadership in West Africa is crucial, and its ability to address its governance and security challenges will impact not only its future, but the wider region. Nigeria's instability stems from a key shortcoming. Despite 64 years of independence, it has yet to establish a national identity grounded in basic freedoms and dignity. Currently, ethnicity, religion, and language, rather than nationality, define the identity of its diverse population. Understanding the violence in Nigeria requires looking beyond its apparent religious and ethnic motivations. For me, growing up in Jos Plateau State, I've witnessed the impacts of these ongoing conflicts on vibrant communities. In addition, coming from a family involved in Christian missionary work, I recognize the shared faith between Christian communities in Nigeria's Middle Belt and those in the US, rooted in the history of American missionary efforts. However, a narrow narrative that reduces Nigeria's security situation to a single story and frames it solely as the persecution of Christians oversimplifies the issue. Religious and ethnic violence is driven more by governance failures and is worsened by hate speech and conspiracy theories rather than being just a singular conflict. Nigeria is facing multiple security crises due to religious extremism, banditry, criminality, resource competition, communal disputes, and separatist agitation. These issues are intertwined with history, poverty, and political contestation. The interplay between religion and politics in Nigeria is deep and complex. Leaders often romanticize the country's unity, but fail to foster it, as we saw in the divisive 2023 elections. As Nigeria approaches another national election in 2027, religion will once again continue to influence candidate selection, voter behavior, and campaign strategies. The Trump administration's claims that Nigeria is permitting targeted killings of Christians distracts from the broader issue of extremist violence and insecurity in the country. Since returning to civilian rule in 1999, Nigeria has been a major recipient of US security assistance, primarily aimed at counterterrorism. Despite this significant assistance, the extremist threat in Nigeria has worsened, expanding from the northeast, where Boko Haram has waged a 15-year insurgency, to the northwest, where so-called bandits are raiding villages. Most victims in both of these regions are Muslims. Since Boko Haram's emergence in 2009, Nigerian administrations, including the administration of President Tinubu, have struggled to improve security. And many Nigerians across the country acknowledge that the situation has only worsened in recent years. Therefore, narratives focusing solely on the killing of Christians often overlook Nigeria's broader insecurity and the fact that religion is usually a secondary factor in the violence. Recent violence in the Middle Belt predominantly affects Christian farming communities from various ethnic groups. Victims are mostly believed to be killed by Fulani herders who are primarily Muslims. But the killings aren't explicitly motivated by religious reasons. While some community members actually describe the violence in their communities as genocidal, they often emphasize that the underlying causes are ethnic and material, such as land grabs, rather than on religious differences alone. Nevertheless, the high level of insecurity across Nigeria has left many religious communities, including Christians, at risk. The failure to hold the perpetrators of these violent acts accountable has created both a sense of impunity among the attackers and a sense of grievance in the affected communities. Nigerian citizens have mixed reactions to the US redesignation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern. Many particular Christian groups welcome the attention, seeing it as a chance to push the Nigerian government to act against the violence. However, there are also concerns among many Nigerians, including Christians, that President Trump's threats of military action could also exacerbate existing political tensions. Public opinion surveys overall in Nigeria indicate a public consensus on the seriousness of the security challenges in the country, with many Nigerians valuing their diverse communities and believing in shared national unity over divisions. Now allow me to offer some concrete recommendations. First, to the United States government. It's important to engage deeply and broadly with communities across Nigeria. The US can play a constructive role, but it must avoid selective intervention and address the concerns of all Nigerians across all religions to prevent worsening sectarian divisions. Two, it's important to rethink reactive quick-win actions that may seem beneficial to Nigerians, but could have larger and far-reaching negative impacts. If the Trump administration proceeds with unilateral military action in Nigeria, it could endanger the Christians it aims to protect and worsens divisions along religious lines. Third, prioritize security governance to help tackle the violence. The US should reassess its security cooperation with Nigeria, focusing on building a program that prioritizes security governance and ties military support to tangible reforms. This renewed partnership should extend beyond military aid to include intelligence sharing, rule of law, and governance. 4, support local actors that are advancing inclusive peace and conflict resolution. Supporting moderate religious leaders and community networks in developing early warning systems can shift the focus from identity-based conflict to sustainable solutions. 5, work more with Nigeria's states and its growing city centers. The US government should decentralize its engagement with Nigeria by strengthening dialogue and support for receptive leaders at state and local levels, particularly in the Middle Belt, which is home to about 45 million people. The focus should be on local security to foster a safe environment for agriculture and manufacturing. This approach should integrate economic development with sustainable peace by addressing root causes of the conflict through economic revitalization, institutional reform, and business initiatives. Finally, for the US government, it is important to revive the US Congressional Bipartisan Caucus on Nigeria. The US relationship with Nigeria is a key strategic partnership in Africa. An active bipartisan congressional caucus will highlight this importance, foster discussions, and provide a platform for diverse perspectives to better inform legislative responses on various issues. Now, recommendations for the Nigerian government. It is important to appoint a Nigerian ambassador to the United States to improve its international engagement and manage narratives about its security realities. It's critical for President Tinubu to appoint a capable Nigerian ambassador to the US, as I also recommended in my testimony in March. Second, the Nigerian government needs to make accountability of both perpetrators and of the authorities central to the response. Nigerian citizens need justice, as criminality in the Middle Belt has increased due to impunity. The narrative of Christian genocide has gained traction because of years of mass killings without accountability, leaving many faith communities feeling abandoned. Third, Nigerian government needs to get serious about police reform. Nigeria's single federalized police force struggles to address the country's complex security challenges. The Tinubu administration needs to accelerate initiatives to improve citizen security, including the recruitment of 30,000 new police personnel he approved in June. The military in Nigeria is overextended. Many of them are handling duties that should be handled by the police. And it's essential to think about how the country reassigns police officers that are currently providing personal security to wealthy elites to focus more on the serious crimes. Next, coordinate federal and state action and messaging. Effective coordination so desperately needed among Nigeria's federal and state governments is often undermined by finger pointing, and this must stop. Finally, for the Nigerian government, it's important to start laying the groundwork for peaceful elections in 2027. Nigeria must address the use of religion as a trigger for electoral violence. The new leadership in its election commission presents a chance to restore public trust in the electoral system, promote responsible political behavior, and strengthen security and judicial processes. The violence in Nigeria has resulted in significant loss of life. However, addressing the country's complex security issues solely in religious terms and focusing on one group of victims is counterproductive. A fresh approach is needed both for Nigeria and the United States. Nigeria must tackle its institutional weaknesses in security, justice, and conflict prevention to effectively end the violence and hold perpetrators accountable. The US should engage in open dialogue and cooperation, fostering a better understanding of Nigeria's complexities. Both countries can leverage current diplomatic tensions to strengthen their bilateral relationship and collaboratively address the wider threats of jihadist violence in Nigeria and the surrounding West Africa and Sahel region, as both nations have vital interests at stake. Thank you again for inviting me to testify, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you so very much for your testimony.